All right, so we are live. Thanks for coming to this Friday's live stream. So because we've got a number of BTM units going out the door over the next couple of weeks, and because we've been working with customers recently on adopting React Extract for fire damage and all sorts of reasons, we wanted to make sure that today we brought you information on how to set up and build or assemble your BTM sprayer, how to use it, and then also how to care for it, how to maintenance it. Occasionally, you're going to hear Cersei down here. She's whining a little bit today. That's our dog. And so you might see her kind of in the background here or over there, or who knows, but don't worry. She's a sweet girl, but she might be joining us a little bit today. All right, so to begin with, let's start out by just kind of looking at the BTM sprayer. I will move this around, and we're going to be talking about terminology, right? We got to identify all the parts and pieces first, so that if we're ever troubleshooting together, I know what you're talking about and vice versa. So let's start out by opening the BTM sprayer. And the first thing that we're going to look at is the pump housing and the pumps themselves. All right, pump housing is this gray box right here. And let me just see. If I come around here, can you still see me a little bit? Yeah, a little bit. I want to be able to point out some things. Okay, so in here, you've got two pumps, okay? When you are looking at these pumps, you've got two types of hose. You've got a thin hose, which is all of your air lines. These thicker hoses, the red and the blue, those define your chemical lines. So whenever we're troubleshooting together, let's identify those first, right? If you ever have an issue, we'll identify those first. And then we're going to be looking at let me make sure I use the right terminology here. Well, I don't have it on there. These little things right here, I'm not sure you can see it. They're black with a little white stub at the bottom of them. These are your air lines, and occasionally one of these might drop down. And what you might want to do is call us and say, hey, we're not getting any suction through one of the lines. It probably has to do with that being seated, okay? So if that ever happens, just simply push up on that air line and reseat it. In fact, when I just did that just now, it actually clicked into place, okay? Same thing with your chemical lines up here. You've got these barbs coming down from your pumps, and these are your chemical barbs, and we want to make sure that those are seated as well. And you'll notice that there's a hose clamp around both of those, so you've got a tight fit. If all of that's good, then we're good, okay? So let's close this up, and then I'm going to turn this way so you can kind of see the working side of the unit. Now, a couple things going on here. We mentioned those chemical lines. Here are your sockets coming out that you're going to plug your hoses into, all right? Everything plugs in, and I'll demonstrate that as we assemble this together. Here's your air line moving up the machine, and if you turn it across, it closes the air line. If you open it up, it allows air to flow. To begin with, whenever you're priming the pumps to start, you're going to have the air line closed, okay? Second troubleshooting thing, if for some reason your pump isn't priming, cut it off, take the chemical out, and I'll show you this in a little bit, but take your siphon hoses out of your chemical, close this up, and start it back up, or I'm sorry, close your air line off, and start the pump again, okay? Speaking of starting and stopping, right here is your electrical switch, okay? Off, it's labeled on. Moving down again, and this is just your motor and electrical. Moving down again, you've got two gauges. One of them is your air line. No, you're fine. Here, let me just tip it this way, okay? One of them is your air line. If you would just point it toward me, though, you're going to move the entire base there because I've got it just at the angle that I needed it.
I can see you now.
Okay. This gauge here is going to give you your pressure through the airline, okay? Once you've got it primed, you want to set that at 50 PSI. No matter how many guns you have running off this, you want to set that at 50 PSI. The second is your gauge for the pumps, or I'm sorry, for the tanks themselves, right? Dual tanks. And then one more thing I want to point out, and that is this outlet right here. This should be closed when you're using it and open when you're not using it. Can they see that? Let me just tilt that up a little bit. Okay, so this brass looking fixture down here, you want to close it when you're using the system so you can create pressure in your tanks. You want to open it when you're not using it. It'll allow all the condensation that may have built up to escape so that you don't have any issues, and it will maintain the life and integrity of your tanks. All right, so it's open right now. All right, I'm just going to leave this like this because we're going to work from this side of the unit right now, and I want to go through some more terminology with you. So this is called the base unit. Whenever we're building these, or you might see on like your sales order, if you order one from us, this is called the base unit. Everything else are called assemblies, okay? And then within those assemblies, you've got parts. So let's talk about the first assembly. This is a hose assembly that's incomplete because I want to point out two things to you. A lot of folks would say, well, let me give a better example here. All right. A lot of folks would say that this is a female part because of the socket. This is not a female part because of the socket. It's a female part because of the threading, okay? The threading determines whether it's male or female. So this is a socket. This is a plug, okay? But the plug is not what defines whether it's male or female. It's the threading, and this is a female plug. So in this case, at one end of our hose, we're going to have a female plug. At the other end of the hose, we're going to have a female socket. It's important to just know what these terms are because, again, if we're ever troubleshooting, you have to replace something, you want to know what I'm talking about and vice versa. So now we have a completed hose assembly. Now let me point out the opposite of that, and that is I'm going to pull one of these sockets for contrast off, and we talked about a female socket. Okay, let me see if I can get a little close. Throw that in front of the camera there. Okay, that's the socket end. Flip it around, if you would. That is the female end of the socket. Now let me hand this to you. This is a socket, right? Now flip it around and see the male end. Okay, that is a male socket. All right, so it's the threading that determines whether it's male or female, not the fact that they can plug into one another. There's a lot that's been said about that. I'm not going to say it in this live stream. Okay, so now that we've got that defined and we've taken the time to walk through the hose assembly, I'm going to go ahead and plug this in. Let me move these guns out of the way, these lance assemblies out of the way. All right, now you're going to notice that there is a red pointing in the direction for where the red line goes in and blue for blue. So I'm going to simply pull back the socket, insert the plug, and now we're clicked into place, okay? So everything is always going to be plugging into a socket. So I'm going to take you through all the assemblies here. Now, here is our PSG gun assembly. At the base of the PSG gun assembly, again, this is a male plug, all right? And I don't have these fixed in place yet. I will later today because this one's going to a customer for Monday on-site training. This, as we talked about before, tying into the gun, is a male socket. So now I'm going to plug my plug into its socket, and now I'm secure there. All right, let's go up this one more step. Now, lances are available at be careful over there, you just hold on something. Lances are available from 4 inches long, 4 inches long, all the way through 79 inches in length. So depending upon what your reach needs to be, for example, in a crawl space, you may want a shorter wand. This is an 18-incher right here, okay, that has, again, a plug and a socket, and altogether that's an assembly. Now, this plugs directly into the socket, and now we've got our lance assembly plugged into our PSG gun assembly. Final thing, again, color coordinated, right? Because a lot of times we're using the red to identify oxy-prep, right? That's why, just move this out of the way. That's why oxy-prep's label is red, right? Everything goes together. So now, to make it easy for your technicians, we're going to plug our dual coupler directly into our lance assembly. Why is that important? What we noticed is in being in the field, if you had to wrench all of this out, if you had to wrench out your lance assembly in order to change the length of it because you find that you're either too close or too far from the surface, or that based upon just it being a 2-foot crawl space versus a 4-foot crawl space, you need to change out your lance assembly. Well, you don't want to have to get into losing bits and pieces while you're doing it or taking the time to change out, because in confined spaces, it can also be uncomfortable. So a very quick way to deal with that is to have a quick connect that allows us to quickly disconnect these assemblies and reconnect the ones that we need to use. Likewise, we set these up in our couplers so that you have 2 size tips in here. So whether you need something that is a lighter spray, which is a 0.2 gallon per minute 80-degree tip, or you need to go a little heavier because you're working on cold surfaces or in extra hot conditions to a 8004 tip, then you can quickly switch from one side to the other, and it doesn't create any downtime. Again, the BTM system's all about efficiency in applying products, especially for the overall react extract process, which you'll see at our website, EnviroGuardDirect.com. So if you have questions about this and you want more information, not only on the BTM system, but on the react extract system for mold, for fire damage, for water damage, etc., you can go to EnviroGuardDirect.com and get more information there. All right, so I did mention something that from a vocabulary standpoint I hadn't brought up yet, and that is these tips, okay? Tip control is exceptionally important when it comes to spraying. So we can go all the way from a light misting tip, which I would consider a 0.1 gallon per minute. In other words, 1/10 of a gallon per minute will produce a nice misting tip. And then we've got to think about the fan width. We find that the most versatile fan width is an 80-degree fan width. So you're going to see that all of these tips that your system comes with are like an 8001, an 8002, and an 8004. Within your red dual coupler, you're going to have an 8002 and an 8004 tip. Now, if you want this to be different, when we're putting this together for you and doing a custom build, we'll put in whatever tip size that you want. But for the most part, if you're running the traditional react extract process, then we will put an 8004 and an 8002 tip in here. So you've got great delivery and control, but you're also able to wet out the surface and the soil load on the surface adequately to get the results that you're looking for. Believe me, you're going to have more control with these tips than you've ever had in your life working with any other sprayer. All right, in the second one, well, let's do this. Before I get to talking about the second dual coupler, I want to walk through a hose assembly, okay? Now, why is it important to know how to put a hose assembly together? I'll tell you why. Because sometimes when you're out in the field, you got to troubleshoot and you don't want a problem with your hose, like a hole that develops, to take you down for the day or even a portion of the day. So when and if you develop a problem or a hole when it comes to your hose, you can simply cut it off. And now there's a couple things that you might want to have. And we have a little kit that we can make for you that if you want just kind of a field kit for mending hose and things like that, all that you'll do, and let me use the blue so we're doing this right, all that you're going to do is, this is called a, it's not the hose barb. Well, I can't think of it right now, but I'll get back to that. What is a hose barb is this, okay? So if you had to cut this off, you would pull this hose barb out first, or just cut it at the base, all right? And then slit it up the side, and then you would, free your hose barb, and you would reinsert the hose barb. Now, this hose barb is not male because of this end. Again, it's male because of the threaded end, all right? So we're inserting a male hose barb into your hose. Takes a little bit of pressure to do so. Oh, you know what? Well, I'll deal with that later. I made a mistake. All right. When you're doing this, take two, you're going to put this on first. Let me rip this off here. Okay. Then we got to color code these things. So we're going to put on our sleeve here. I used to have that underneath it. All right. Now, once that's done, and you know what? So I get a flush 90-degree angle. I'm just going to snip that off right there. And now I'm going to go ahead and insert my hose barb again. All right. One other thing that you may have, being a contractor, and that is a heat gun. So I'm going to go ahead and heat this up so it all conforms. We got a nice finished product here that's durable. It'll just take 1 minute. You can't do this with a hair dryer, by the way. I've tried. It just doesn't get quite warm enough to give you, well, you'd be there forever. So with a heat gun, and this will come in that little kit as well. More of these. Not the heat gun, the indicators. All right, now we're going to slide this right up over it, and it exposes those ears. Now here's a clamp, hose clamp. Here's a clamping tool, and when you do this, you don't want to pull this clamp all the way up against that barb. You want sunshine to show a little bit through there, and then you're simply going to take the clamp, and you're going to pinch it down just like this. All that you want to do is do it till it's tight, all right? You're not going to go all the way with it. No need to do that. It just needs to be tight around that barb inside, and then you're good, okay? We'll release that. And now we've got that part of our assembly. And for this piece, let's just go ahead and throw on our female plug. And since I've already got this on that side, I'll redo this later. Let's go ahead and throw on a female socket here so we can complete everything. All right. So now we're plugging directly into our base unit. Again, terminology is important. And then over here, we're going to plug into our lance assembly. Notice I'm saying plug into every time. It's because that's a plug, right? It really makes a lot of sense when we're talking about troubleshooting and working our way up the system. And then finally, oh, you know what I need in there? I need a PSG gun assembly. All right. Now we're going to tie our lance back in. And then finally, we've got another dual coupler, okay? Now, because the reaction side of oxyprep and oxypar in this case requires less product, about half as much product, we engineer that up front. So whereas we have a 0.4 and a 0.2 gallon per minute when it comes to the red side, right? We do a 0.2 and a 0.1 to ensure that you've got the right control and minimize dripping and things like that when it comes to the blue side. All right. So that's your total unit right there. Okay. Now, we've got one thing that we haven't addressed a lot yet, and that is these siphon tubes. All right. Now, underneath the unit, if I'm facing the unit, on the left-hand side, there's already red indicator tape that shows me that that is my red siphon tube. Okay? So, that's this one right here. I'm just going to put a couple buckets up here so that, you know what, I wish I had some empty oxy. You know, I'm going to turn it around just so that there's no confusion. That's our oxy prep for this demonstration here. You see that? Yeah, kind of. A little bit. And then we're just going to pretend that the taller one is our oxy-par. Okay? So now we're totally set up, because what's going to happen is, of course, our pumps are going to pull the product at 50 psi that we set over here, are going to pull that into the unit, and once it primes, then we're going to be able to apply here. Now, the question that would come up would be, well, from an efficiency standpoint, what's the best way to use these guns? And the answer is, if you can have one technician on one gun and the other technician on the second gun, you can really be efficient while working through a space, okay? So that means that one technician, in the case of a mold remediation job, is applying oxy prep to the surface and pre-treating all of those surfaces and getting the stain removal done, but also pre-treating so that we get the reaction that we're looking for once the second technician applies oxy-par to the surface. That will create a neutralization reaction that not only lifts and suspends all soil load to the surface for vacuum extraction, which is another part of why everything is so efficient, but it neutralizes. Notice I use that term neutralize to describe that reaction. That's important for two reasons. Not only does that create a physical foam where all the soil load is adsorbed into it. I didn't say absorbed. Adsorbed means out, right? So it's adsorbed into the foam for vacuum extraction. Now, I'm using a lot of terminology, and if we ever get together to train your team on our on-site programs, you're going to notice that we've got two aspects to on-site training. We've got the technician training where we go through all of the same information, and then we back up for the sales and marketing teams, and we take them through all this terminology, because our desire is to help our customers differentiate themselves from their competitors and be the smarter, more educated contractor in the area. And I'm sure you already feel like you do, but us working together really provides that important terminology to make those distinctions and points of difference, so that now we're not just talking about S520, we're talking about S520 plus React Extract to give you the ultimate system for mold remediation. Okay, so we've gone through this. You understand exactly why and how everything works together. So let's talk a little bit of chemistry here, because, again, we've got customers right now who are, maybe they are a React Extract customer for mold, but they're not quite sure how this works for fire damage. And the chemistries differ a little bit. So before we do anything on the maintenance side, which we're going to get to in a moment, I'm going to remove these buckets. And last week, you probably noticed that we started talking about having these new cocktail cards, okay? You can expect to see a bunch of these cocktail cards, and the purpose of them is to be as succinct as possible, but give as much instruction as possible so that your technician can simply hit a QR code, go right to the card that they're looking for, check themselves before a job, during a job, to make sure that they're doing everything correctly. Well, part of that is making sure you're using the right chemistry. Okay, so if we are doing a mold job, let me see if I can back these up just a little bit here and give myself some space. If we're doing a mold job, and I'm going to throw, to indicate, right, I'm going to throw our red line over here, all right? So red in this case is oxy prep, and blue is OxyPar. Okay. OxyPrep gets applied first for mold remediation, followed by OxyPrep to neutralize. Okay, that's your cocktail, if you will. Not really a cocktail because we're not mixing these together, but there are times that you do want to do some mixing. Take, for example, here we go. If you are doing a fire damage job, actually your cocktail, am I frozen up there, Christy?
It's okay.
Okay. Your cocktail is 50% OxyPrep and 50% Code Orange on one side, and then your neutralizer is OxyPar on the other side. The application method does not change. It's just that we need the ingredients in here to penetrate and lift that oil. I use oil loosely, so soot is an oily soil load, okay? But we could be talking about oil, everything from cooking oil to petroleum oil, and we need the ingredients here to do the emulsification, and we need the ingredients here to allow for the neutralization reaction that creates the efficiency of the system. Let's go a step further. Let's say that you have a water damage situation. You got a category 3 water damage, okay? It might seem strange from a terminology standpoint, but your cocktail in that case is 50% grease gobbler, 50% OxyPrep, and again, it gives you the penetrance and everything else that you're looking for so that all of the muck, we'll just call it muck in this case, of the category 3 can quickly be penetrated and emulsified on this side of things, but that we have the chemistry in place so that we can react it, pull everything to the surface, and vacuum extract those surfaces as well. Okay. Now, let's say that we're dealing with a biohazard job. It's the same cocktail as a water damage job. So the importance of us creating these cocktail cards is that those are the things that are going to be indicated. You just make it easy for guys to go, yep, I've got the right products going to the job with me to do the job. And what we're able to do with this complete system, because we're talking about reactive chemistries that are, instead of scrubbing, doing the scrubbing for you, pulling everything out from the surfaces, right? In wet stage, because of that foam, being able to extract, and in some cases, we've done exteriors where you have a fire damage and all of those flames are licking the outside from the soffit vents of a brick building or something like that. Let me just show you that cocktail again because we're talking about fire damage now. When that happens, it might be a rinse step, right? Instead of an extraction step. If we're indoors, generally it'll be an extraction step because we don't want to add more water to the situation. If it's outdoors, like what I was talking about, then it's going to be a rinse step, okay? But again, there's no waiting to do a dry HEPA-vac or anything like that. Our moisture, the foam that forms between this reaction is our containment. Instead of having a HEPA filter, we're using moisture, kind of like you would use moisture in an asbestos removal, right? So those parallel one another. We're using moisture here. So not only do we have a better process or faster process, a more complete process using reactive chemistry, but then the efficiency that backs that up is not having to wait to have dry surfaces for extraction. I CRCS 520 HEPA sandwich, okay? We're doing the extraction in the wet stage, so no waiting there or drying surfaces there. And then we've got one additional thing going for us. We've got a unit that is electric in nature, right? There's no pumping. There's none of that. It is point and shoot, move simultaneously with 2 technicians through that, complete space, probably a 3rd technician at the very, trailing 2 to 3 minutes behind, extracting everything else in front. And that's why a crawl space that even has an MSI rating of 4, right, which is the highest mold severity index rating that we deal with, can knock out a 2,000 square foot crawl space in a morning versus it taking days to do by other methods. Okay, so I hope that is helpful before we move on to the maintenancing side of things, because the maintenancing side is very easy. Do we have any questions? Oh my goodness. Do we have anything in here that I need to be paying attention to? We're good? Okay. Would you click back to comments there? Okay. All right. Let us go and talk about maintenance. All right. So one of the most important things from a maintenance standpoint, and Christy, if you would do me a favor, there's a autoclavable bucket over there that is gray and blue with a Primera mop system in zero gravity. Would you bring that over to me? All right, I want to walk you through the full maintenancing of this equipment, because the last thing that we want to do is to have a corrosion issue happen. I just yesterday had to send new parts out to a customer, I think up in Minnesota, over in Iowa, I can't remember. Anyway, because they just weren't quite maintaining the system correctly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of some product here. And we're going to bring these buckets back in. So, yeah. All right. So, first thing that we want to do when we are rinsing the system at the end of a job is that we want to fill 2 separate buckets with 2 gallons of water each. You can probably hear Cersei whining. She does not like this portion of the program. All right. So what we're going to do is, by the way, this is my red line, and this is my blue line. We're setting this up exactly like I spoke about it before. Let me just make sure I'm not hung up here. Okay. Red line, blue line. Okay. Now remember, we've got reactive chemistry going on right now that's a neutralization process. So what we're going to do is we're going to first rinse our entire system with 2 gallons of water through each of these buckets. So we're going to put 2 gallons of water, fresh water, in each of these buckets, and we're going to run that through the system. Okay? We're going to capture that into 2 separate buckets. Yeah, you know what? We can capture it right back into the existing bucket. Scratch that. As you're doing it, shoot that water right back into, let me just release this so I can reach it, right back into the bucket that's coming out of, okay? Rinse that all the way through, and we'll recapture our 2 gallons in here. Now we've got dilute oxyprep in this case and dilute oxypar in this case, okay? Now follow me here. On this side, we are on the high side of the pH scale, right? This side is the low side. So acid, alkali. We're going to switch these, okay? Now we're going to rinse our system again. And in this case, what you're going to see is as soon as it hits your hose lines here, you're going to see a trail of foam pass all the way through those lines. What's going on? You are neutralizing your entire system and the hoses themselves and everything at the end and beginning of that system. Now we have neutral equipment on the inside, right? It's been neutralized. The last step that we're going to do, again, that's neutral, so you can do anything with that water that you want to, okay? It can go into the septic system. It can go to the municipality. It's a neutral solution. Now, the last thing we're going to do is take 2 more gallons of fresh water, and we're going to rinse 1 more time with that. And then what I want you to do is one final step. And that is, I want you to take whatever the device is. It doesn't matter, what kind of bucket it is. It could be long and thin or whatever. But what I want you to do is disassemble each of your parts. Have just some clear water solution over here. And we're going to throw all your parts. Just imagine this. Yeah, well, that'll fit. Just imagine we've got water in this autoclavable bucket. And we're just going to allow those to sit for a little while. This is all stainless, so you can sit it overnight, whatever it might be. But what we don't want is any, chlorides and things of that nature just sitting on top of that on these surfaces overnight, especially the inside. Now, because we like to work with light things, the only thing that's not stainless in this is this lance right here. Okay, this is a coated steel lance to keep it light. So it's especially important for your lances that you follow this procedure so that you don't have corrosion issues. And so these things last a while for you, okay? They are a wear part, okay? So you'll eventually replace them, but this will keep them around long enough that you'll be happy with the lifespan of these parts. So we're gonna have everything from our lance assemblies to our dual couplers to our PSG gun assemblies. All of those are rinsing, okay? That is going to prevent about 99% of all the problems. Where are some of the other problem areas? Occasionally, like I had mentioned before, these barbs will fall down and you got to reseat those. And if they don't reseat, and if you don't get the pickup that you're looking for, it just means that the end of that hose has become frayed. So all that you're going to do is you're going to pull that hose out. You push up and pull out, right? And then you're just going to snip the end of that hose off like a 1/16 of an inch, not much at all. And you're just going to reinsert it, and then it'll seat properly, and you're off to the races again. Okay. What else can go wrong? Well, occasionally things could like break off, I suppose, right? Every now and then you might find that somebody's rough with the unit and you need to, replace this down here. We can send you a separate relief valve or release valve down there. One thing I would recommend is at the end of the day and using it, wipe the top of this system down. Sometimes people are a little bit sloppy in working with it and they'll get chemical all over it or whatever. Just wipe it down to prevent against corrosion there. And every now and then you might have a pump go down on you. Now, in the 4 years that we've been building BTM sprayers, we've replaced probably fewer than a dozen pumps. Okay, we've got hundreds of units out there right now, and to have that kind of a success rate is pretty good. Okay, so you're rarely going to be replacing a pump, but if you do, you might have to replace a pump. They're a couple $100, I think, a piece. Okay, that's about it. That's about all that can really go wrong with these systems. So, if you have any questions, let us know. Give us a call at 828-548-3900. That's our local number here. And we'll be happy to walk you through any questions that you have about the system or how you can incorporate it into your remediation, restoration, or reconstruction company. If you have product questions and you want to develop some step-by-step guides together for your staff. I was just on the phone with Johnny yesterday. We're redoing a React Extract sheet right now for a fire damage that's coming up in his schedule next week, because we really believe that there's a link between training, support, and the products that you're using, right? That's what makes EnviroGuard different, is that we're here to support you the entire way. So if you have questions, reach out to us. Or if you just want to pop off an idea and get a response and you don't want to have to talk to us, feel free to shoot us an email at support@enviroguarddirect.com. Again, that's support@enviroguarddirect.com. And there are 2 D's in that. So whenever you go to enviroguarddirect.com to check out our new website or become a new member of that site, which I encourage you to do, pretty soon we're going to be launching some really cool things that are going to automate the shipping process and things that you're going to love. Or if you want to email us at support@enviroguarddirect.com, we'll get right back to you normally the same day and answer any questions that you have. I can't guarantee you that we won't call you back, though, to make sure that we have kind of nailed every detail of the question that you're asking, because a lot of times we need more information. I think that's it for today. So we really appreciate the time that you spent with us today to go through the BTM system and understand the assembly, the use, and the maintenance of the system. And we look forward to seeing you again, not next Friday, but the following Friday. Next week, I'm going to be in Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. So if you are in the areas of Huntsville or Birmingham or Tuscaloosa or Meridian, Mississippi, or in a decent shot of New Orleans and you want to get together, let me know. Still filling up the schedule for that trip next week, but by next Wednesday, I'll be down in the New Orleans area, leaving here Sunday. So have a great weekend, everybody. We will see you 2 weeks from today. Take care.